Hey, welcome back to another episode of Detection at Scale. Today, I'm here with Jacob DePriest, who is the CISO at 1Password. Hello, Jacob.
Hey, Jack, thanks for having me. Looking forward to chatting today.
Me too. You have a really interesting background. I was hoping we could start there. How'd you get into security? Where'd you spend most of your time, and what are you working on right now?
Yeah, I started out my career at the National Security Agency, and I was there for about 15 years. It's hard not to get into security when you're spend that long at the agency. I didn't start out on the security side, though. I started out in engineering, so building real-time software-defined radio systems and hardware software integration, FPGAs, those kind of things. So it was a lot of fun, but even building and deploying those, you start to really dig into secure software practices, secure deployments, how to secure servers and installations around the world. And over time, kind of moved into helping developers do that, developer experience and software supply chain and all those things inside the agency, open source, and then eventually working on some broad deployments of secure IT across the agency, both inside and on the unclassified side to help with telework. So that was kind of the journey in, and then from there, I ended up at GitHub running the security operations team there for the first little over a year, and then as the deputy CISO for the last couple of years. And that was a blast, kind of combining the software development side of things with security and open source all in one. A lot of fun. And then I've been at 1Password for a little over 7 months now, and really enjoying it here.
It's a great resume. Going from government into private sector, it seems like you have a really deep, diverse set of security experience through that.
Yeah, it's been really fun. I'm really thankful that I had the opportunity to start out on the engineering and developer side. I think it's given me an appreciation now that I'm more fully in the security side on what the impact is for security rules, policies, controls on the developer lifecycle. And particularly when we think about company outcomes and business objectives, right? I think for me, one of my fundamental tenets is security programs have to scale through engineering partnership and automation. Like that's the only way in today's world that we can really scale the outcomes we want. And so I think those relationships are really important. And because I have that background, I think it gives me a bit of a more empathetic understanding of what our developer teams are going through wherever I'm at. And so that's been, I think, really valuable.
So jumping in, you started as CISO at 1Password. Tell me about your framework for assessing a security program with fresh eyes. Like, what are the most important, urgent areas that you look for?
I think at a high level, sort of anywhere, I tend to start with, and I think most security leaders do, is what are the company objectives? What are the products we're building and trying to get to market? What do our customers need? What's our value proposition? What are our primary objectives? Is it speed to market? Is it trust? Is it a new product? What are those things? I think if we don't start with the business objectives, it's difficult to know if we're on the right track. And then from there, I kind of move to what are the risks to those objectives. And so that comes from talking to a lot of people, trying to understand what our technology stack is, what is helping folks get things done, what's in the way of getting things done, and what could potentially put those business goals at risk, and what of those are security related. And then the next kind of step is what are the programs, processes, and more importantly, what are the people necessary, the roles necessary to make sure we're mitigating those risks and helping the business achieve those goals. So those are kind of the three buckets I tend to approach things in at a generic level. 1Password's been a lot of fun because as I joined, we're right in the stage of moving from a single product, password manager only company to a multi-product SaaS security company with a variety of offerings that we're putting to the market now. And so it's been a really interesting time as we shift into that mode as we're acquiring other businesses. And for the security team, figuring out how to scale our processes and programs and capabilities to handle acquisitions and handle new technologies as they come in.
Anything that you can announce? I mean, aside from the password manager, what else is 1Password? Have we said anything public yet?
Yeah, we've said some stuff that's public. So over the last, year and a half, I'd say the big two, we've acquired 4 companies, one back in 2021 for secrets kind of admin, and then Passage for passkeys. And the last two, Collide, was in I think it was last year, early 2024, for device trust to help companies figure out like what's going on in the endpoint devices. How do they integrate that device trust into making decisions about endpoint health? And then most recently, Trelica. And Trelica is coming on board to drive our access management and sort of SaaS management posture. And combining all these things together, we're calling that extended access management. And so really excited about bringing these things together: credential management, access management, endpoint health, device health all together.
So with GenAI taking over in the last few years, like how has that affected your framework for approaching risk mitigation and really like taking action on the objectives you have as a security leader?
I think from a security perspective, a lot of the risks are the same. I think most security teams need to address the fundamentals before they worry too much about any specific tech stack or any specific new technology that's emerging. With that said, though, I think there's an opportunity for Gen AI to help security teams as well go faster and do more. And so I think it's a balance, but fundamentally, I don't tend to think of Gen AI as its own risk category or its own thing we need to mitigate. I mean, certainly we need to write responsible use policies and ensure that our workforce understands the right way to think about when to use AI and what types of information to put into a chat tool. But beyond that, I think it doesn't necessarily change how we're thinking about defense in depth, secure by default, secure by design principles. It really just adds a layer of additional complexity, but also a layer of tools that we can lean on to go faster if we need to and solve problems internally.
So something that you said along those lines on another podcast I was listening to was the beauty with a system like GitHub Copilot is that as developers are building code, the type completion is effectively, secure by default, best practice by default. Do you think that security has the potential to have those same benefits when it comes to using LLMs?
I think there is a huge opportunity there, both from the coding perspective still, because that's just getting better and better every month, every release that these kind of secure coding copilots and companions are evolving. But I do think on the security front, it's getting better too. And so, I'll give you an example. I was reading an article this week actually about somebody writing a pretty complex detection as code to put into their SIEM environment. And they did it all with Gen AI kind of coding help, but they did it by providing lots of context into the prompts of like, these are the things I'm worried about. Here's the systems I'm using. Here's the types of events that I want to detect against. And we're able to really speed up that process by a lot. And so I think that's still adjacent to the coding space, but I do think we're going to see more as well. And things I'm excited about in the security space are things like on the incident response side of things, maybe increasing the speed of our triage, helping our responders write communications. And so they can not spend a bunch of time writing communications. Like we all know in incidents, you got to communicate out what's happening to the stakeholders. So if we can reduce the time and burden on our responders and incident managers from doing that through Gen AI and automatic summaries and things like that. In fact, we're doing some of that at 1Password. It's great. You join an incident channel, even if it's an availability incident or an outage, and you kind of get an instant AI summary for some of the tools we're using. And it's just really been fantastic. So I think there's just going to be more and more of that as we go along.
What type of context to go a little bit deeper into the triage use case? Like what type of org context do you think is most helpful for an AI system to know?
In terms of like the org structure and like how the company's set up?
I mean, anything that's related to the posture of the organization, the processes you follow, like if you were to guide your team on, utilizing AI, like what would you tell them are the most important bits to understand about the organization to do its job better?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really interesting emerging area as we start to hook more of these tools up to multiple systems. Right now, a lot of them have been kind of single source, like the coding situation, right? Like, hey, I want to go code, I want to do this task, or I want to summarize, help me write my weekly report, right? But as we start to get context in from multiple places, I think this is going to help in a few areas. So when I think about triage, for instance, if the tools that have Gen AI kind of engines in them, if you will, have context of the org chart and they have context of the various accesses that people in the org chart have, then there's starting to be some reasoning about risk there of, hey, if this, we got this signal in, this detection, and it's potentially exposing information, but it affects these people. Well, these people in the org chart, we know, have really elevated access because they're either, DevOps engineers or they're executive leaders in the company. And then you can kind of combine that with context you're getting from your infrastructure, whether that's to a CSPM or a DSPM or whatever that is. And I think the reasoning and the ability to quickly point out risks is going to get better and better. And humans do that today, but it takes a lot of context loading in, and we're going to miss things. And I would much rather our analysts get that signal and then spend the time validating, spend the time then taking the next step to understand what those risks are and then mitigating versus spending more time on kind of the triage and investigation side. And so I think if we can speed that up through this additional context and the benefits of the reasoning we're getting from the models, I think it's going to be fantastic.
How bullish are you overall with the idea of agents sort of working alongside security teams? Do you think there's certain areas that it's more applicable, or, there's certain areas where people are talking about using agents there, but you don't think that's a great use case? Like, how do you think about the value prop of an agent in security?
I think about agents and security in a couple of ways. I think one is I'm cautiously optimistic about the benefits. Unlike some of the coding examples, I don't think we've seen a ton of really compelling use cases yet, but I think it's early. I think it's really early, and I think we're starting to see some of those demos and kind of notional examples coming. So I'm cautiously optimistic here, and I think the more solutions are going to be able to figure out how to integrate in a secure way without us having to export the entire context of all of our org chart, all of our data, all of our company off to some other place to reason about it. I think the deployment model and the security model around it's going to be really important. And so, even along those lines, like, how are we going to protect the credentials associated with agents? How are we going to have the authentication and authorization be secure when we're deploying agents alongside whatever team, security team, HR team, whatever it is? And so I think we have a lot of work to do as an industry to figure this model out in a way that doesn't open up new threat vectors. But if we do it right, I think there's a lot of potential.
Outside of security operations, like, what are some other interesting parts of security where you're seeing GenAI sort of slide into?
Yeah, on the GRC side in particular, I'm really excited about some of the GenAI applications for things like vendor reviews, third-party questionnaires, things I think anybody in security would admit can be tedious sometimes, yet we all have to do them. And so the ability to absorb the context from your company's document store of all the controls you have in place, all your reports, SOC 2 findings, pen tests, and be able to reason about the questionnaire you just got that is in a spreadsheet format you've never seen before, and help your analyst answer that in 5 minutes as opposed to 5 hours. I think those things are really compelling, and those use cases are really compelling. And we're starting to see real examples of that and real solutions in that space. The other one that I've been thinking a lot about recently, I mentioned Trelica earlier in access management. I've been thinking a lot about access management as a result, is context aware and organizational aware and risk aware access management. And so, today Trelica is workflow based, and it really enables businesses to kind of speed up the workflow, onboarding, offboarding, assigning accesses based on things like org chart position. But you can see a future where something like that could be augmented with AI, where suggestions can be made, or like, hey, this person joined the company, and even though they're not in this team, their roles and their work looks like these other 4 people. Maybe they need these accesses. Things like that to really speed up the efficiency and honestly, the job happiness. Like, nobody wants to spend hours putting in tickets when you first join. We've had a few people join on our team the last couple months, and it takes a few weeks to get everything sorted. It'd be really nice if there was sort of a tool or capability, or an agent, as it were, to be able to help speed those things up. So I think there's a lot of applications in these spaces, right, that we'll start to see coming.
Yeah, totally agree. And when we think about scaling the teams out, anything that we can delegate on the analytical side that's like a rote task is automatically going to be a huge benefit for the humans on the other side of the equation. So I'm very excited about that. One of the things I want to pick your brain about is adjacent to all this, which is data, right? Like, our agents are only as powerful as the context and the data it has. So given how much context there is these days with SaaS, like, what's been your general strategy for funding and sort of scaling a security ops program where you need all the data? Like, how have you done this in the past in a scalable way?
Yeah, I think about this a few ways. The context is really important. And I think getting some of this is the fundamental challenge of any fast moving company in particular. And I think it gets even more challenging when you're in a startup space where it's normal to experiment with different vendors and different solutions. And so the number and like various quality of SaaS solutions that might be in a typical startup, it's going to wildly fluctuate. And so how do you get all that into a place from a security perspective where you can reason about it, even with or without AI? And some of that is just kind of brute force of like, hey, we're going to onboard this new tool. Does it have an audit log? Okay, if it has an audit log, let's hook it up to our SIEM. If it doesn't have an audit log, how are we going to get some sort of signal from that to think about scaling our security operations around it? How are we going to do user access reviews, things like that? And so I think, automation and process goes some ways here, but also I think it comes into the human side of it, of building relationships with the folks that are buying these tools across every company, helping them understand what the security team cares about, what they don't care about, what are the data concerns that the security and privacy teams may have ahead of going through with a purchase, and then trying to work through those in partnership. And so I think this is really an area where education and partnership can pay huge dividends and speed that up and just kind of make the whole process better on all sides.
I like that answer. It's very different from what I've heard in the past, but it makes a lot of sense because not a lot of vendors always think about the right level of depth and availability or accessibility of those logs.
I found in various contexts that the security posture for across the vendor landscape is just so wildly different. And so we have to, instead of trying to force standards across the entire industry and community, which we should also do. I mean, I love the secure by design philosophy and the companies that are signing on to say, hey, we're committed to that. I think it's great. At the same time, we have to realize like there's new startups sprouting every day, and you don't immediately start a company and have rock solid security practices, logs, robust everything in place on day one. It's just not how it works. And so I think as a security community, we've got to figure out how to build our tools, processes, and threat models to accommodate that. And this is a case where I think better analytics and more advanced analytics, potentially augmented by AI, are going to help. So that way we can start to look at things like, hey, this particular integration feels really risky because it's got high levels of access, but low levels of visibility and things like that, and highlight those in a more structured way.
I like that framework. How did you phrase it? High visibility, or say that one more time? That was good. That was a good line.
Hopefully we're recording this because I probably can't say it again.
We are recording it. I'll have to listen back. That was a good line though. I'm going to use that. Awesome. So talked a lot about security and AI and leadership and all these various areas. The thing that I'm curious about is your perspective as a CISO and as a leader. So you had a post where you went on LinkedIn and you shared a photo of a book you were reading called Wiring the Winning Organization. So I'm curious, like, if you have takeaways on leadership related to the book or just sort of in general from reading that you think is worth sharing for other folks listening in who are managing security teams.
Sure. Yeah. I think in that book in particular, I really love the set of books that come out of what used to be called the DevOps enterprise movement. I think it's since been kind of rebranded to be broader because I think the recognition is the same one I've had, which is the philosophies and approaches that scale DevOps teams, scale many other teams, and how we think about looking for optimizations, how we think about team structure, how we think about where's the friction and how to empower teams to be their best. And so I tend to gravitate to those books, even though I'm not leading an engineering team necessarily or a development team day to day. I think there's a lot of analogies across them. In terms of like thinking about scaling security teams in general, I think, again, this comes down to matching what we're trying to do as a security team with the company goals. And I think where teams can get into trouble, and I've gotten in trouble in the past, is you start to scale and do things that you think are right, regardless of sort of the outside signal or the business goals. And when there's that impedance mismatch, I think that it can cause friction that you may not even see immediately, but you'll see it in team members not feeling like they have enough work to do, or maybe the work they're doing is not valuable, or how do you align it to the most important things? And so one of the things that I continue to try and get better at and learn and grow as a leader is translating what I think are the right business goals to the most important things for our teams to be doing, and making sure that that's clear and that I'm clear as a leader on that. And then asking my team when I'm not clear, hey, let me know. Like, if you feel like you don't know why you're working on this thing, like, let's talk about it and let's either get clear on it or let's change what we're doing, because we don't want people to spend time on things that aren't the highest priority. So that's been something I've been thinking a lot about recently in terms of leadership.
It reminds me of do you know the 5 dysfunctions of a team? It's a classic one, right?
Yeah.
He's got a few books on leadership that are really great. I love that one in particular, but that's a great takeaway. I mean, that author always talks about creating clarity and reinforcing clarity. His other book's called The Advantage. That's what I was thinking of.
Oh yeah.
And it's extremely similar to what you just said, and it's a really good takeaway. So to round things out, we always end with pieces of advice. So based on your career spanning NSA and GitHub and now 1Password, like what are 3 pieces of advice that you would give to other CISOs listening in who might be starting in a new job and kind of getting the lay of the land and helping protect their company?
I'll kind of go not in order here, but 3 pieces of advice. One is build and trust your network. So none of us are doing this alone. I have people I call, I go get lunch with, I catch up with on a regular basis. Hey, how are you approaching this problem? How are you thinking about this? How have you solved this in the past? And I think it's so important to have that group of people that you trust and can go to, even if they're not necessarily security leaders. Maybe they're just other leaders in other contexts. But I think having that peer group is just incredibly important for your own growth and to get perspective outside of the day-to-day. It's easy to kind of get in a bubble in our jobs and our companies, particularly if you're in a remote job and company. And I think that's just incredibly important. Number 2 is figure out a work-life balance that's sustainable. And this is like the holy grail we all try and figure out. I still am working on this, but it's taken some time, and I've tried to put some practices in place that are effective for me and my family and kind of where we're at in life right now, and tried to be really careful to protect those. Of course, if you're in the security world and you got a security incident, all bets are off sometimes, and you gotta burn the midnight oil. But outside of that, putting in those self-care and family care practices, I think is really, really important. And then number 3, make sure as a security leader, you are wired into the right folks in your company, that you're solving the right problems. It's super easy to get focused on the security problems we see every day, and not that those don't always intersect. Many times they do, but being able to ensure that you're powering the business and are a good business partner, I think gives your team and you the credibility and sort of the goodwill to continue to grow and expand and be a good partner. And it's difficult to do that without those connections and without that connection to the broader goals of the business.
Very inspiring. I love it. It's a good way to kick off the weekend. We're recording this on a Friday, so I'll be thinking about work-life balance and intentionality and everything.
It's critical to keep doing it year after year.
It's important. Anything to plug, Jacob? Are you guys hiring? You have any events coming up that are interesting and exciting?
We are hiring across the board. So check out the jobs there. We also blog regularly as a company, both technical blogs and just kind of what's going on in the industry, which is really good. And we'll be at RSA in San Francisco here. And there's lots of other people announcing some fun things and getting to hang out with the folks that are there. So come check us out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Jacob. It was awesome having you on. Really appreciate it. For those listening, if you want to catch up on other episodes and read technical blogs as well, we also have content at detectionatscale.com, nifty new domain. And we have all our Spotify episodes and everything linked there, and lots of content about generative AI and security. So check that out. And yeah, that's it for this episode. Thanks again, Jacob. Awesome having you on.
Thanks for having me.
Talk to you soon.